shirt on. Welcome, viewer. Fucking goddamn. Interesting. Hey. Hey, thanks, Nicholas Dean. Okay. All right, from where I left off on Twitter, now YouTube, Facebook. My reading of Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Chapter 1, 3rd. I've watched through his eyes, I've listened through his ears, and I tell you he's the one. Or at least, as close as we're going to get. That's what you said about the brother. No. Sorry, I added it out. Hi, Julie. I'm reading Ender's Game. I'm about to start over because I just fucked that up. Okay. The brother tested out impossible for other reasons. Nothing to do with his ability. Same with the sister, and there are doubts about him. He's too malleable. Too willing to submerge himself in someone else's will. Not if the other person is his enemy. So what do? Surround him with enemies all the time? If we have to. I thought you said you like this kid. If the buggers get him, they'll make me look like his favorite uncle. All right, we're saving the world after all. Take him. The monitor lady smiled very nicely and tousled his hair and said, Andrew, I suppose by now you're just absolutely sick of having that horrid monitor. Well, good news for you. That monitor is going to come out today. We're going to take it right out, and it won't hurt a bit. Ender nodded. It was a lie, of course, that it wouldn't hurt a bit. But since adults always said it when it was going to hurt, he could count on that statement as an accurate prediction of the future. Sometimes lies were more dependable than truth. So if you'll come over here, Andrew, just sit right up here on the examining table. The doctor will be in to see you in a moment. The monitor gone. Ender tried to imagine the little device missing from the back of his neck. I'll roll over on my back in bed and it won't be pressing there. I won't feel tingling and taking up the heat when I shower. And Peter won't hate me anymore. I'll come home and show him that the monitor's gone. He'll see that I didn't make it either. That I'll just be a normal kid now, like him. That won't be so bad then. He'll forgive me. That I had my monitor a whole year longer than he had his. We'll be not friends, probably. No, Peter was too dangerous. Peter got so angry. Brothers, though. Not enemies, not friends, but brothers. Able to live in the same house. He won't hate me. He'll just leave me alone. And when he wants to play Buggers and Astronauts, maybe I won't have to play. Maybe I can just go read a book. But Ender knew, even as he thought it, that Peter wouldn't leave him alone. There was something in Peter's eyes when he was in his mad mood. And whenever Ender saw that look, that glint, he knew that the one thing Peter would not do was leave him alone. I'm practicing piano, Ender. Come turn the pages for me. Oh, is the monitor boy too busy to help his brother? Is he too smart? Got to kill some buggers, astronaut? No. I don't want your help. I can do it on my own, you little bastard. You little third. That won't take long, Andrew. This won't take long, Andrew, said the doctor. Ender nodded. It's designed to be removed, without infection, without damage. But there'll be some tickling, and some people say they have a feeling of something missing. You'll keep looking around for something you're looking for, but you can't find it, and you can't remember what it was. So I'll tell you, it's the monitor you were looking for, and it isn't there. In a few days, that feeling will pass. The doctor was twisting something at the back of Ender's head. Suddenly, a pain stabbed through him like a needle, from his neck to his groin. Ender felt his back spasm, and his body arced violently backwards. His head struck the bed. He could feel his legs thrashing, and his hands were clenching each other, wringing each other so tightly that they arched. Dee Dee! Shouted the doctor. I need you! The nurse ran in, gasped. Gotta relax the muscles. Get it to me now. What are you waiting for? Something changed hands. Ender could not see. He lurched to one side and fell off the examining table. Catch him! Cried the nurse. Just hold him steady. You hold him, doctor. He's too strong for me. Not the whole thing. You'll stop his heart. Ender felt a needle enter his back, just above the neck of his shirt. It burned, but wherever in him the fire spread, his muscles gradually unclenched. Now he could cry for the fear and pain of it. Are you all right, Andrew? The nurse asked. Andrew could not remember how to speak. They lifted him onto the table. They checked his pulse, did other things. He did not understand it all. The doctor was trembling. His voice shook as he spoke. They leave these things in the kids for 3 years. What do they expect? We could have switched him off. Do you realize that? We could have unplugged his brain for all time. When does the drug wear off? Asked the nurse. Keep him here for at least an hour. Watch him. If it doesn't start taking in 15 minutes, call me. Could have unplugged him forever. I don't have the brains of a bugger. Oh, got a little choppy at the end there. Got excited you were reading more. Oh, Orson Scott Card. But no sound. Hopefully it's just my end. Oh, the battery. The battery! Holy shit. Nobody can hear me on the live video. That's hilarious. And they can't see the bubble. I knew about the bubble. Oh, that was what was funny about it. Holy shit. Okay, I just got another little rush of confidence. Maybe I can finish this chapter. How much longer is it? Oh my god. Okay. You got back. Okay. Boop. Oh. Oh. Oh boy. This is hilarious. I'm hilarious. I'm a hilarious person. Back to the text. He got back to Miss Pumphrey's class only 15 minutes before the closing bell. He was still a little unsteady on his feet. Are you all right, Andrew? Asked Miss Pumphrey. He nodded. Were you ill? He shook his head. You don't look well. I'm okay. You'd better sit down, Andrew. He started toward his seat, but stopped. Now, what was I looking for? I can't think what I was looking for. Your seat is over there, said Miss Pumphrey. He sat down, but it was something else he needed. Something he had lost. I'll find it later. Your monitor, whispered the girl behind him. Andrew shrugged. His monitor, she whispered to the others. Andrew reached up and felt his neck. There was a Band-Aid. It was gone. He was just like everybody else now. Washed out, Andy? Asked a boy who sat across the aisle and behind him. Couldn't think of his name. Peter, no. That was someone else. Quiet, Mr. Stilson, said Miss Pumphrey. Stilson smirked. Miss Pumphrey talked about multiplication. Ender doodled on his desk, drawing contour maps of mountainous islands and telling his desk to display them in 3 dimensions from every angle. The teacher would know, of course. He wasn't paying attention, but she wouldn't bother him. He always knew the answer, even when she thought he wasn't paying attention. In the corner of his desk, a word appeared and began marching around the perimeter of his desk. It was an upside down and backwards at first, but Ender knew what it said long before it reached the bottom of the desk, and it turned right side up. Ender smiled. It said third. Ender smiled. He was the one who had figured out how to send messages and make them march, even as his secret enemy called him names. The method of delivery praised him. It was not his fault he was a third. It was the government's idea. They were the ones who authorized it. How else could a third like Ender have got into school? And now the monitor was gone. The experiment entitled Andrew Wiggin hadn't worked out after all. If they could, he was sure they would like to rescind the waivers that had allowed him to be born at all. Didn't work, so erase the experiment. The bell rang. Everyone signed off their desks or hurriedly typed in reminders to themselves. Some were dumping lessons or data into their computer at home. A few gathered at the printers while something they wanted to show was printed out. Ender spread his hands over a child-sized keyboard near the edge of its desk and wondered what it would feel like to have hands as large as grown-ups. They must feel so big and awkward, thick, stubby fingers, beefy palms. Of course, they had bigger keyboards, but how could their thick fingers draw a fine line the way Ender could? A thin line so precise that could make spiral 79 times from the center to the edges of the desk without the lines ever touching or overlapping. Gave him something to do while the teacher droned on about arithmetic. Arithmetic. Valentine had taught him arithmetic when he was 3. Are you all right, Andrew? Yes, ma'am. You'll miss the bus. Ender nodded and got up. The other kids were gone. They would be waiting, though, the bad ones. His monitor wasn't perched on his neck, hearing what he heard, seeing what he saw. They could say what they liked. They might even hit him now. No one could see them anymore, and so no one would come to Ender's rescue. There were advantages to the monitor, and he would miss them. It was Stilson, of course. He wasn't bigger than most other kids, but he was bigger than Ender. And he had some others with him. He always did. Hey, Third. Don't answer. Nothing to say. Hey, Third, we're talking to you. Third. Hey, Bugger Lover. We're talking to you. Can't think of anything to answer. Anything I say will make it worse. So we'll say nothing. Hey, Third. Hey, Turd. You flunked out, huh? Thought you were better than us? But you lost your little birdie. 30. Got a Band-Aid on your neck. Are you going to let me through? Ender asked. Are we going to let him through? Should we let him through? They all laughed. Sure, we'll let you through. First, we'll let your arm through, then your butt through, then maybe a piece of your knee. The others chimed in now. Lost your birdie, 30. Lost your birdie, 30. Stilson began pushing him with one hand. Someone behind him then pushed him towards Stilson. Seesaw. Marjorie Daw. Somebody said. Tennis. Ping pong. This would not have a happy ending. So Ender decided that he'd rather not be the unhappiest at the end. The next time Stilson's arm came to push him, Ender grabbed at it. He missed. Oh, gonna fight me, huh? Gonna fight me, 30? The people behind Ender grabbed him to hold him. Ender did not feel like laughing, but he laughed. You mean it takes this many of you to fight 1/3? We're people, not thirds, turd face. You're about as strong as a fart. But they let go of him. And as soon as they did, Ender kicked out high and hard, catching Stilson square in the breastbone. He dropped. It took Ender by surprise. He hadn't thought to put Stilson on the ground with one kick. It didn't occur to him that Stilson didn't take a fight like this seriously. He wasn't prepared for a truly desperate blow. For a moment, the others backed away. Stilson lay motionless. They were all wondering if he was dead. Ender, however, was trying to figure out a way to forestall vengeance. Keep them from taking in a pack tomorrow. I have to win this now and for all time, or I'll fight it every day. It'll get worse and worse. Ender knew the unspoken rules of manly warfare. Even though he was only 6, it was forbidden to strike an opponent who lay helplessly on the ground. Only an animal would do that. So Ender walked Stilson's supine body and kicked him again, viciously in the ribs. Stilson groaned and rolled away from him. Ender walked around him and kicked him again in the crotch. Stilson could not make a sound. He only doubled up and tears streamed out of his eyes. Then Ender looked at the others coldly. You might be having some idea of ganging up on me. You could probably beat me up pretty bad. Just remember what I do to people who try to hurt me. From then on, you'd be wondering when I'd get you and how bad it would be. He kicked Stilson in the face. Blood from his nose spattered on the ground nearby. It wouldn't be this bad, Ender said. It would be worse. He turned and walked away. Nobody followed him. He turned a corner to the corridor into the bus stop. He could hear the boys behind him saying, "Geez, look at him, he's wasted." Ender leaned his head against the wall of the corridor and cried until the bus came. I'm just like Peter. Take my mother away. I'm just like Peter. Still nothing, so it goes. Don't worry. Only one will be posted. One with sound. Into chapter 1. Chapter 2, Peter. Oop. Still recording. Do save the gallery, delete. This is how I hack the internet, baby. Josh Thompson, like my video. Cannot be found. Oh. Okay. Anyway, what the fuck am I talking about? Let's go camera. Boom. Right? Could have done that a second ago. Oh well. Let's take this out. Go like this. Right? Okay. Take a little hit of this boy. I wonder if I could do Believer right now. I feel like I'm all out of it. I'm just out of my magic. Nobody else at all. Like to kick you and get rough. Give your all, but it's not enough. Bricks and stones may break your bones, but words can break your heart. If you don't know where to go, I'll show you where to start. Kill yourself. Only take a minute. I'll be happy that you did it. Over to your oven, shove your head in it. Kill yourself. We should do it. Really nothing to it. Grab a mug and chunk up a lighter fluid. Sound unpathetic. I sound mean and rude. Suicide's an epidemic. I don't want to be misconstrued. So depression go overlooked. So if you're depressed, then you need to book a therapy session. Talk about your depression. Let a professional hear it. But if you search for moral wisdom, Katy Perry's lyrics, kill yourself. Don't be painful if you are able. Thanks on an oncoming train, you'll kill yourself. Silver mullet, nigger pullet, and it being a bullet. Stick your tongue in a plug, suck a pipe of exhaust, like a dose in the tub, nail yourself to a cross, hold your breath till it's gone, drink a gallon of mace, be gay in Iran, no breath sit on your face, jump off of a bridge, skinny dip in a flood, got it attached to a fridge, drink a Haitian guy's blood, get into a zoo, give a tiger a shove, eat Phillips head screw, marry Courtney Love. I don't think that infringes on copyright. It's just the lyrics, it's not him. And then you can't hear the music other than the things that I say terribly. I know that was really bad. I'm getting tired. And I want to be a human being in front of you. I don't know why. Why art?
But I was in this amazing room. You know, it had all these priceless paintings from the late Renaissance hanging in it. You know, each painting worth, who knows, $1 billion maybe. They're priceless paintings. So the room was It's a shrine, and it was full of people from all over the world who were looking at these paintings. You think, well, what the hell? Why are they looking at that painting? Why is it in this? And wonder. Articulated form. And so well, that's the role of art. And that's the role of artists. You know? And real artists are contending with the unknown, right? And they're possessed by it. They have a personality trait, openness, that makes them do that. They can't even help it. And I've had lots of creative people in my clinical practice, and I can tell you the worst thing for creative people is to not be creative because they just die. And because it's like maybe you're a tree with a few major branches, you know? That's your personality. So if you're extroverted, man, you can't be cut off from people because you just wither. And if you're agreeable, you have to be in an intimate relationship or you die, you know? And if you're conscientious, man, and you're unemployed, you're just going to eat yourself up because you have to have a duty and you have to carry a load because you just can't stand it otherwise. And open people have to be creative. They have to be, because otherwise they die. They don't have any vitality. And so they're cursed with the necessity of putting a foot out into the unknown and making sense of it. And then they're also cursed with the necessity of trying to make a living while they're doing that, which they can't, because you can't. It's almost impossible to monetize creative action, as many of you will no doubt find out. It's very, very frustrating. It's not that creative action is without. People make things magnificent and beautiful. You think about what's happened in Europe over the last 1,000 years, say 2,000 years, this amazing, unbelievable collaboration to make things so beautiful that they're jaw-dropping when you walk into them. And you think about the economic value of that, right? I mean, I think it's either France or Spain that's the most visited country in the world. It's one of those two. I think there's more tourists in France than there are people most of the time. And part of the reason for that is it's just so damn beautiful. You just can't stand it. And you think, what's the economic value of that? It's absolutely incalculable. And what's interesting too is that you build that beauty in, and then the farther away you get from it in time, the more valuable it becomes, right? Instead of decaying, it has exactly the opposite effect. Its value magnifies. And one of the things that I'm deeply ashamed of as a Canadian is that our sense of beauty is so underdeveloped. We're so primitive. It's not even primitive. That's the wrong word because, you know, I don't know what it is. It's second rate. It's second rate at least. It's terror too because people are afraid of beauty. But the idea that art is, the conservatives really have a problem with this in particular because conservative people tend not to be that creative. And it's a mystery by temperament. It's a mystery to me because they spells out at you, you know. So anyway, so that's what artists are doing. And so one of the things I would say is buy a damn piece of art, you know. Find one that really speaks to you and buy a piece of art because you invite that into your life. And it's a look out if you do it. If it's a real piece of art, because you'll also get a little introduction to the artist, and then that'll seep into your life, and that'll change things like mad. But it's unbelievably worth it because it opens your eyes to the domain of the transcendent. That's the right way of thinking about it. A real piece of art is a window into the transcendent. That's what it is. And you need that in your life because you're finite and limited and bounded, right, by your ignorance and your lack of knowing. And unless you can make a connection to the transcendent, then you don't have the strength to prevail. And that's part of the covenant. That's part of the covenant with God. And you can see that because you look at these magnificent cathedrals that our civilization built over the centuries. You know, some of those, they're still building the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, right? And it's an amazing building. I think it's going to take them like 300 years to build that. You know, people in the Middle Ages, they'd start building a cathedral and they think, we'll be done this in 300 years. You know, you imagine the vision that it took to invest in something like that? We look at quarterly reports. We can't think 300 years into the future to build something of that kind of remarkable, what those cathedrals are. So they're perfect. They're trees first, right? They're a forest, right? The Gothic cathedrals, they're a forest, and the sun is shining through the branches. That's the stained glass, and they're the perfect balance of light and structure, because they're representing something about the proper structure of being, which is something like the proper balance between light and structure. And they represent like the sacred tragedy of mankind. That's why they're in the shape of a cross. And they're open to the sky. That's why they have a dome. And they're full of gold so that it glitters, because that's like the city of God, you know. And you can see that integral to our culture is the idea that beauty is one pathway towards God. And if you can't find another pathway, then why don't you use beauty? I'm sure most of you do that with music, because music is the one thing that modern people can't be cynical about. Thank God for that. And I've been fascinated by music because of that. It speaks meaning to people, right? Even nihilistic punk rockers are so damn engaged with their music that they can hardly stand it. And you can knock on them and say, look, you know, you're having a transcendent religious experience, and they'll just tell you to fuck off, because that's... Because that's what punk rockers have to do. But but that's still what's happening, you know. I mean, it's still what's happening. So, okay, so I got into all that because I was talking about the Bible as literature, you know, and trying to lay out, because we need in our culture to justify the arts. And you have to, I don't want to do that by talking about high culture, talking about something abstract and evanescent. That's the wrong way to go about it. This is vital. You know, like one of the things that's really interesting about the University of Toronto is that the one side of the campus where we are is beautiful, medieval cathedral, and the other side is god-awful factory. And, you know, and the thing is, the attitude towards knowledge has paralleled that architectural transformation. You know, at one point, the humanities, let's say, were a sacred endeavor, and so was the art of being educated in the university, and that's turned into, like, mass factory, and that's reflected in the architecture. This isn't accidental. None of this happens by random chance, you know. It's not like there's a conspiracy or anything, because there isn't, but that doesn't mean that these things aren't tangled together, and the loss of beauty in the universities is a catastrophe, because without that beauty, there's no call to higher being. You know, this is also why, you know, I've mentioned to people that they should clean up their rooms. That's become quite the internet meme. But I'm really serious about it, because it's really hard to do that. And I've been cleaning up my room, by the way, for about 4 months now, because my life was thrown into such a catastrophe, and also we were renovating. And so, but it isn't just that you clean it up, you also make it beautiful. And it's really hard to make something beautiful. And it's really worthwhile. And what's really cool is if you learn to make something beautiful, even one thing, if you can just make one thing in your life beautiful, then you've established a relationship with beauty. And then you can start to expand that relationship with beauty out into the world, like into other elements of your life. And that is so worthwhile. It's just incredibly, crazily worthwhile. And that's an invitation to the divine. You know, you have to be daring to do that. And people are terrified of it. People are terrified of color. They paint their walls beige. They're terrified of art. They buy some mass-produced thing because they don't want anybody laughing at them for their lack of taste. And they would get laughed at because they have no taste. But you have to, well, it's right, because what do you know, right? You have to develop it. And so you're going to stumble along and make mistakes to begin with. And you're going to show yourself, because if you buy, I think this is pretty, and, you know, somebody comes over and goes, what's up with you? It's kind of hard on your self-esteem, but it's you're stumbling towards the right, you're stumbling towards the kingdom of God. That's what you're stumbling towards when you try to make an aesthetic decision and to put something in your life that's beautiful. And it's unbelievably worthwhile to do that. And you have to steer clear of the frauds and the con artists and all of that. And art is full of that, of course, because it's difficult to distinguish between the real thing and the fraud, but it's unbelievably worthwhile. And so back to literature. I'm telling you this partly because I've been thinking a lot about the humanities and the arts. And practically speaking, because I know that artistic types are also entrepreneurial types. They're the same personality types. And so it's very much worthwhile to make an economic and practical case for this sort of thing. You study literature and the humanities so that you can familiarize yourself with the wisdom of our civilization. Man, you should do that because people have been working on this thing for a long time and it's rich beyond comparison. So why wouldn't you do that? And you teach yourself to read, and you teach yourself to speak, and you teach yourself to think, and you teach yourself to communicate. And I can tell you, if you can read and think and communicate, you are absolutely 100% unstoppable. And that's another thing that's so interesting about humanities education that's at the core of the university. It's like there's nothing more economically valuable than teaching people how to articulate themselves and communicate, because they can identify problems, they can formulate solutions, they can negotiate to consensus, they can negotiate on their own behalf or on the behalf of others. It's like there's absolutely no downside to it, except that there's responsibility that goes along with it. But it doesn't matter because there's no escape from responsibility. You can either take it voluntarily or you can take it involuntarily. Those are your options, but there aren't any other options. And so we need to understand the role of art and literature and stop thinking about it as an option. It's not an option. It's not an option. What is it said? Man does not live by bread alone. That's exactly right. We live by beauty. We live by literature. We live by art. And literally, not metaphorically, we cannot live without it because life is too dismal and tragic in the absence of the sublime.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
What were you like when I was 25? Well, I was obsessed. 25, so that would have been 87. I'd been in graduate school for 2 years. Well,